All the mics will be live. Okay, just setting it up. All right, here we go. Here we go. Everybody is live now. What's going on, SWAT Cat, Sanctimus, Stephen Harris? Thank you for showing up. All right. As you can tell, this week I am not alone again. I bringing in some more friends. This time we're going to be talking about Magic's effect and the benefits of having Magic the Gathering in D&D this weekend. Thank you guys for showing up to Dungeoneer's Pack Live. This is a weekly show where we discuss topics that matter sometimes just to me, but also to the greater D&D community. I'm Josh. Thank you guys for coming in and watching. This week I have two friends coming in, both working on converting and bringing in Magic the Gathering concepts into D&D. On the designer end, I got Fil Kearney here. He most notably converted the 5-color mana casting system and brought it into D&D. So you can find that on the DM's Guild. I have a link for that in the description below for you guys to check that out. And also, a good friend, I've been trying to get Trevor on for the longest time. Finally, the scheduling worked out. He is from Classes and Constructs. He is bringing monster stats and magic items inspired by Magic the Gathering cards, so you can use in your games. Thank you guys for joining me.
Hell yeah!
Thanks for having me.
Yeah. Let's see. Omisium, Joe Gaylord, thank you for jumping in. Improvididi, I see you. Thank you. All right. So before jumping into this conversation, I asked my community a question of the week. So customary every week. The question this time was question of the week: what's your favorite Magic the Gathering D&D setting and game mechanic? So listed was Guildmaster's Guide Ravnica, the Renown system, Mythic Odysseys of Theros, and the Piety system. And then also saying I like chocolate with my peanut butter. I like both systems. And also, this is still not Spelljammer. I'm actually very surprised. Not surprised at the Spelljammer. So the number one voted on was the Piety system for Mythic Odysseys of Theros. I'm more just surprised that enough people voted for a Magic the Gathering thing, but the Piety system was chef's kiss. I will say that was really solid. The Renown system for Magic is also solid too, but I'm not surprised that the 27% out of 181 votes said it's still not Spelljammer. But yep. So yeah, so we're gonna jump right into it. Did
I lose sound?
Maybe.
I'm not hearing anything anymore. What's going on with me?
I can hear you, and I believe the chat can hear you.
I can hear you.
Good. Am I not able to hear Josh, or is he just?
He might not.
Sorry, I make things awkward.
Oh, it's okay. It's okay. We're having some tech difficulties, guys. So give us a second. Okay, give us a sec. We're gonna go. Let me switch screens right now so we can figure out some tech stuff. Okay. So
yeah, I can hear you on your stream, but I can't hear you.
Okay. Here we go.
I can hear you on your stream, but I can't hear you.
Okay. No, it's all good. It's all good. Okay, we're good. All right, guys. We're back. Tech issues solved. Here we go. All right, so we're gonna just jump right into it. So I have both my guests. If you guys again aren't familiar with their work, definitely go check them out. They are bringing D&D, bringing Magic the Gathering into D&D at different ends of the spectrum. So the big question, obviously, there's some resistance to having the Magic the Gathering property being brought into D&D with a subsection or a section of the D&D community. So, in your opinion, why do you think this set of players and how that trickles out makes them so apprehensive of crossing the streams?
Go for it, Trev.
So I think that a lot of people, especially, so to be clear, just to put my kind of perspectives or biases out there first, I played Magic before I played D&D, and I've only played D&D starting with 5th edition. So I am not one who, obviously, given what I do on my channel, I'm not one who holds those opinions. I think that a lot of people who hold those opinions, it's probably a matter of not wanting, it's a combination of a lot of things, not wanting D&D to feel commercialized, not wanting like Wizards to kind of borrow from its own properties. And I think it is also, some of the resistance comes from the fact that there are a lot of D&D, at least from what I've heard, there are a lot of like D&D specific settings that exist are being almost superseded. New published materials coming out for Magic settings or for like Critical Role or other things, when a lot of the more kind of stalwart, like older fans of D&D want to see things like Dark Sun or like the older other D&D like stuff. I don't necessarily see a problem with it. I'm a fan of chocolate and my peanut butter. Like I think that they should be brought together, and I think that like one of the things that brought me into D&D was being able to take inspiration from anywhere. But I would say that at least if I'm trying to piece together why some people feel that way, that those would be my assumptions on why.
Yeah, I'm going to reflect a lot of that. I'm old guard. I started DMing in 1987, and stuck with it. In 4th edition, I went into Numenera for a while, but I played 4E in the Gamma World setting, not in Dungeons and Dragons specifically. So I have distance in all of them, and I think we have the Renaissance in 5e. Bringing in a lot of critters that are give me more Exandria, but there's a huge portion of like I'm in my 40s and we have arguably a lot more disposable income that can afford, say, $1,000 card deck in Magic the Gathering. That's technically where their bread and butter is at. And that old guard wants Planescape. They want Spelljammer. They want Dark Sun, Mystara, possibly even Hollow World. And I think us older guard would be a lot more open to getting more MTG stuff. It would if they would just clear the plate of everything that we keep asking for. So it's like, thank you for finally giving us Planescape. How do you think you could add Planeswalkers to it? That I think would be a smart conversation to have, but I'm not their marketing team. So, but I think that's where it is. Got new people who came in because of crit. You got old people that are still waiting for all the box sets to become hardbound books. So yeah. MTG has a place. It's just not with either one of those audiences yet.
Yeah,
it's difficult.
Yeah, and I think I'm in the same boat as Trevor. I'm in that cross section of like I started playing Magic heavily before I actually jumped into 5th edition, and it was through Magic the Gathering I actually ended up playing D&D. My group, we would regularly play Friday Night Magics. After Friday Night Magic, one of the guys is heavily into D&D, and we got interested and be like, hey, do you want to start running a game for us? And then from then on, it's just been like nonstop. So I see the whole value, but I also see like, and you bring up the good point, Phil, that yeah, it's a lot of the old guard or those that are even fans of the previous edition stuff. That are just new to just D&D in general, with Critter or not, having the sense of feeling that, hey, we haven't got our old stuff yet. It's kind of, this Magic the Gathering stuff is kind of taking the place of the stuff, and which isn't necessarily true. It's just Wizards is taking time to release some of this older stuff. I know next year we're getting to, in some new format, they haven't actually stated what, but we're getting to previous settings back, and then we're also getting 2 new settings that are not tied to Magic either. So there's going to be a lot of new stuff next year, and I think it's fairly obvious with that UA, the last UA they put out, Spelljammer is Spelljammer-esque, Planescape something, Planes hopping is going to be in one of these settings. There's no denying it now. Yeah, Spelljammer may not be a meme anymore, and I have to stop using it at this point. Yeah. Yeah. All right. So with that said, we kind of just know where the issue lies. But obviously, all 3 of us are enthusiastic about Magic. What do you guys like about the new set of books? So we have Ravnica with the Renown system, and then a slew of other options. Theros with the Piety system, and then Strixhaven around the corner, bringing some sort of relationship-based system. Where pretty much the base question: where's the value, and how can people utilize these books?
I think that's Trevor more than me. Go for it.
I've played a couple of one shots in the Ravnica books, and I think they're great because they provide a good entry point to the universe for players who are new and aren't familiar with those things. They're very unique settings. Like there's so much in Magic the Gathering that I'm sure it exists somewhere in in D&D in general, but like the entire kind of the ecosystem of Ravnica as an example, it's so well done in that book, like the Guildmaster's Guide to Ravnica, and then the background system adds like so many more layers to it. There are things that can appeal to the Magic players, and there are things that can bring non-Magic players into a game. It creates a really rich world. Now, I know I'm obviously like directly the target audience for it, but seeing how the designers can stretch their legs, like the systems in like the reputation system in Ravnica and the piety system in Theros, those are so awesome. And I don't think that they've done things like that. They're doing something similar, or I think they're doing something similar in Strixhaven. But they haven't done something like that in a lot of the other books, at least not that I can recall. And it seems like, I don't know, I think for those reasons, it's so awesome because it acts as a good entry point. The Magic settings, especially the ones that they've made books for, they're not that difficult to kind of get into. They're pretty engaging. Like the mythology inspiration from Theros and the kind of magic school from Strixhaven that's coming out. There's this kind of default draw, I think, for some people. You might not be interested in all of them. I love a lot of what they've done with those books. It creates an excellent world. There's normally at least 1 or 2 like quick adventures to get like players going in that world. There's a lot of mechanics. There's cool spells and magic items. I love what ends up being the result. If that answers the question.
Yeah. And for you, Phil?
I think it's really interesting that Renown and PD were already mechanics that they had proposed as optional rules out of DMG, and that Ravnica and Theros actually took those obscure mechanics and put them center. Yeah. This is what we intended this to do in your world. Here's a robust example with amazing artwork for you to lean into to start building that. And then, of course, we saw a surge on the DMs Guild of like Eberron Renown, like with patrons, like patron guilds, and Eberron specifically, but also in the realms. Piety, I don't think we've seen as much investment. I think there may have been some FR God PD stuff that had been laid out by some of the designers, but I didn't lean into that as much. But I think it's interesting that Wizards has these obscure components that exist, and that they're using these books as opportunities to build them into your environment. So aside from actually using the MTG artwork to exemplify the different all the different characters and items and character options, of course, is just using their own assets to better use now, and then starting to codify the mechanics and stats behind some of these items, just to start leaning into, this is what, like, from Wizards' perspective, this is what we think about these IPs becoming new 5e game elements.
Yeah, and then for me, like, yeah, you guys both hit on it. It's these core systems that were optionate rules. They give you a solid framework. If especially you're coming into fifth edition, you don't really know how to gamify. I guess the best way to say it, like a faction system for your own different factions and thieves guilds and opposing groups in your own city, or like you want to reward a cleric for aligning with a god, or even a warlock for aligning with their patron, and then give them more rewards beyond what their own class gives them. The piety system and the renown system are perfect for your games to just give you that, and then just to build off of it on your own, or other designers' works where they've taken it and then taken it a step further to help fit into your game. I really like how these systems are good for, like you said, Ebron, Phil. Like Ebron has tons of factions, and it's like it's perfect slam dunk. Just hop in and play it with it.
Yeah.
So yeah, for DMs, I would say the big value is these expanded rule systems, and why you would consider picking up these books even if you're not going to play into any of the Magic the Gathering settings. Um, but that brings me to another thing. Obviously, not every Magic the Gathering idea mechanic, it can be transitioned into D&D. But what are some ones that aren't in the game yet, that you think would fit perfectly, and they should not waste their time? Like, they shouldn't be waiting and holding back on it. They should just kind of dumping and bring it in ASAP.
I'll just lead off with the color pie.
Yeah.
If anything, they need the color pie, and by need, I just mean that so much of MTG identity and theme is built around the 5 colors that you can, in the card set, you can either go, and as I understand their normal process is to build mechanics first and then tie those to the flavor, but it's still guided through the color. So from D&D, you could either like Dice Try is a YouTube channel that does amazing work detailing like how does the color identities inform what kind of a character you want to play, which then extends to what kind of an organization. And like if I'm playing blue red, that's most characterized. It's called Izzet because the Izzet League is the penultimate blue red combination. And it's all chaos for direction. And so that gives you your mad scientists, that gives you organizations that are willing to take risks to the environment to have a technological gain. It informs so much about philosophy, but then also builds into technical bits. If they were to, say, build a pseudo alignment system built around color, they would be able to build a lot deeper narrative tools for people to choose their colors and then build around it. Or like I'm in Gruul Clan, which is red-green, but I am very orderly. I have extreme white-blue tendencies in my character, yet I'm bound to this red-green organization. What friction does that create? And I think they've attempted to brush on that without actually codifying color language. So that's my first take. I'll step aside.
Okay, I'll throw it to you right now in a sec, Trevor. I just wanted to read Sanctimus. Thank you for the 25. Thank you for the 25 gifted. I allow Ravnica backgrounds in all of my games as long as my players can tie into it to their backstory in some way, not necessarily connected to the Ravnica guild. Is this good, bad, overpowered? What are your takes on this individually? Okay, we'll start with you, Trevor, and then Phil, and then I'll answer. I'll give my answer.
I fully support that. I love that idea. I'm a fan of letting players kind of modify and use their backgrounds however I want. So I don't remember the user's name who asked that question, but I think that like I don't really have a problem. My players aren't like min-max kind of players, so I don't ever have to worry about that. But I still would ask for like a flavor reason why is your character this way, or you picked this guild. What philosophies of this guild? Even if this guild doesn't exist in the same way in our world, how does it work? I love it.
Yeah, ditto. Sanctimus, that's awesome. Leaning, I'm running an Ebron campaign using color mechanics right now. And like, for example, if we were to look at the Gatekeepers, which is an Orc Druid sect, it would squarely sit inside a green, but you could easily see, like with the horde creatures, being a blue-green Simic design versus old guard demon hunters in the demon wastes, bending in that direction towards Gruul red-green. You have that green tie-in, but the angle of blue versus red, you have very different sects that are going to approach gatekeeping in radically different ways. So staying on that example, if I had a team that specifically wanted to work with the gatekeepers, you could have some of the team going blue-green. You could have other teams going red-green. You could have white-green people that are dealing with the Eldeen Reaches connections and building alliances to the more human organizations. I think that's a great way to implement Ravnica backgrounds, and using the color pie to lean into any campaign setting, and just immediately bakes in flavor and narrative space that if you're an MTG fan, then you automatically grok it. But just flipping through the MTG book, the Ravnica setting hardback, you get that flavor as well almost immediately.
Yeah, and I'm pretty much doubling down on everything you guys both said. And in terms of overpowered, I wouldn't even look at it in a mechanically as a power thing. In general, the MTG books and the Theros books want to give the players a little bit more of a power boost in general to fit into the setting. But in terms of what Ravnica does compared to Theros, Theros is a lot stronger because you got the supernatural gifts that are kind of like a bigger layer that gives you a bigger power bump.
Sure.
In terms of Ravnica, they tied the power into your background. And even then, think of it as an expanded spell list. You're just going to give access to certain spells to certain characters that might not have access to those in the first place. So it's not necessarily a big power gap. If anything, I think you would be more worried if you gave somebody like a magic item at level 1 versus giving them access to a couple more spells. So yeah. So yep.
Let me just say real quick, as far as power balancing, the Knights and Tricksters book that I have on DM's Guild talks about that, because like fighters and rogues don't get magic access if you take those subclasses until level 3, versus characters that have access to their added spells at level 1 if they're taking backgrounds. The easy solution is to just grant them a magic initiate feat. So they get a cantrip, they get 2 cantrips and a first level spell they can use once per day until they hit 3rd level and catch up with the rest of the team if they're going to go with magic as well. So the backgrounds don't really help marshals very much. But that, just giving them that extra feat, I find balances the added power that they get from backgrounds. Piety is a little different because anyone can have piety.
Yeah.
And you can build organizations or different paths other than the gods to have that piety through. So that's power everyone can have and can all curve into the same. So don't mean to derail. It's just I wanted to throw that out real quick as far as balancing.
Yeah. Thank you. All right. So hopefully that answers your questions, Sanctimus. And then we're going to throw back to Trevor. What mechanic or idea from Magic did you feel that they don't have yet that they should just toss into the game ASAP?
There's so much. I am kind of surprised they haven't, and maybe it's just because they were overusing them for a little bit. The Eldrazi, just like the concept, there are so many really wild villains and like really rich villains in terms of like the Eldrazi and the Phyrexians are the ones that I think of immediately. And I don't know if they would have like a book, like a source book, like Ravnica or Theros, and tie those in or plant seeds for that. But that stuff, I remember when like Emrakul was first spoiled and like seeing the animation on like the Daily Magic like webpage for that. But there's a lot of really, really awesome creatures that could be big bads. And I think that is something that they could incorporate on a larger scale. On that same scale, the concept of planeswalking, right? Like we kind of talked about that a little bit. I think that would be really cool. I think it would be not the same, but right, like the domains of dread are kind of where you're like kind of jumping from one very specific area, and the domains of delight in Wild Beyond the Witchlight are kind of similar into another. It doesn't seem like much of a stretch to go from that to planeswalking, and I know that there have been versions of it with like Planescape and things, but I think that I wouldn't be surprised if that. And then there are just like mechanics, like actual card mechanics that I think would be cool. Or like it wouldn't be that hard to draw some lines between like sentient items and like the living weapon mechanic or like things like that. But that's much smaller scale than the other suggestions that I made.
Yeah. Oh man.
Yeah.
Eldrazi. Okay, for those that don't know about the Eldrazi are pretty much Magic the Gathering's cosmic horror enemies. That they're very similar to the Cthulhu and a lot of these other elder gods that are in D&D. Um, but they are scary. Like like if you're playing in the card game, like there's a reason why I believe Emrakul, the original, is banned in Commander as your commander, like you, because it just warps the game in such a way. So it's very scary. If you're putting your players against that in a D&D game, they should feel that sense of fear. So go ahead, Phil. I know you want to chime in and say something.
Oh, sure. Sorry. Yeah.
No, it's all good.
Again, first and foremost, color pie. It is what MTG is. So I don't know where their headspace is at as far as bridging the old guard 8 schools into the 5-color Magic system, but it obviously can be done. So it's I mean, anyone that's looked at Tap and Tap Burn knows that it can be done. I would just love to see actual support for it. Outside of that, I'm going to reflect Mizram and St. Harris that Innistrad, like you were saying, Trevor, Innistrad was such an obvious domain flavor that it's a little amazing that they didn't. Considering that there was an Innistrad card set that just came out,
Yeah.
I'm honestly flabbergasted that they didn't even try to curve that into the space between Ravenloft dropping and the Innistrad card set dropping. That would have been the perfect time for them to do a 40-page tear out like they did with the whatever that thing is that they put on DM's Guild, the book of NPCs. It's like if you had people that were investing time in that random piece, they could have easily done Innistrad Deep. I don't mean to disparage our Lord and Master Wizards of the Coast, but the flavor was there, and everyone was like, never mind. And also, just to go on a further bend, if they really, if they decide to adopt the color pie, the piety system in Theros could get so much deeper, so much faster, because then they could start tying piety to the color.
Yeah.
Like if you wanted to have piety in white, that means there's 5 gods that may care about what you're trying to achieve to further their domain of power. But that also means that you got 14 other gods that are going to be pissed off at you immediately for not supporting their colors. And you could then run multiple pieties at once as levers. Like you've got the enemy and ally colors. So if I push white, I'm going to be taking hits on red and black and not doing anything to green and blue. But if I decide to start pushing green, so I have white-green devotion, improving piety, then I'm going to be hurting the rest of the circle.
Yeah.
So I think there's a lot of depth that they could really lean into. It's honestly, it's ideas like that are like on my 2024 timeframe. I would like to see Wizards come hit it before I get to it, but I mean that's what I do is what I thought Wizards would have done already.
Yeah.
And it's like, well, they're not doing it, so I'm going to start doing it.
Yeah.
So anyway, but those are my big kicks: color mechanics, and then tying piety and renown to those colors.
Yeah, and I'm on the same boat with you on the color pie. I think outside of just adding more goblins, because I'm a goblin guy, so it's like more goblins in the games.
So flavored.
Yeah,
Oh,
but the color pie is integral to the feeling of Magic. It and for the card game it builds Magic, but when they transition this stuff into D&D, for me that is the little bit of fire, that little bit of spice that just is missing from these books. And it's because you've touched on this, Phil. The color pie itself is more than just the spellcasting system. It's also Magic's alignment system, if you're going to equate it to D&D. And even then, I think it's a little bit more rich than D&D's alignment system, because it's not necessarily about these two polar opposites combining. It's this morality of a spectrum within each color, and how that spectrum interacts with each other color and opposes those colors, which I think if you were to introduce a system like that into 5th edition for character building on the narrative side, your character is going to feel a lot more richer compared to my character is chaotic evil, chaotic good. and
Right.
whereas there's no clear
Kills that
definition.
entire argument.
Yeah,
Kills that entire argument. What is Drow? Drow aren't evil. Get away from us. Yeah, no, but you could easily say that Loth is black something.
yeah,
Black blue or black red, take your pick depending on which house you're in.
yeah,
With the Drow, it's going to depend on how they're going to worship Loth or not worship her at all.
yeah.
So, and that's all. Yeah, again, all dictated by color.
Yeah, and then and even then, like Ravnica is steeped in it. Theros too, with each god having their own set of color, and then Strixhaven around the corner. Each college is based off the two colors, and even then, it's a different. Strixhaven takes a different look at the colors compared to Ravnica. So while Izzet is the blue red guild for Ravnica, when they're about pretty much what you said, Phil, expanding creating mechanical marvels through chaos, and just trying to keep pushing the limits. Strixhaven takes the idea from blue and red of creativity and expanding it in a more artistic direction. So
Absolutely.
yeah. So and you're seeing that.
Yeah.
So in terms of character building, as someone who really just likes looking at narrative and getting inspiration from that, that's like the big part for Magic I feel is missing for the books that I wish Wizards or anybody just brings the alignment part into the game to help. Because I remember playing the Ravnica game when my buddies and I were all MTG fans, trying to convert the spells and then also find the right alignments and stuff like that. That was, and I believe it was we played before your book came out, Phil. So it was just like if we would have held off a little bit, boom, I would have just been like, yeah, we have a book that helps us. So with that, I believe Cleric Corner had a question. So this was going to be more pointed towards specific cards. Which card set would you look at if you were looking for class inspiration for D&D?
Class inspiration.
Yeah, class inspiration.
That's definitely Trevor's will more than mine.
Yeah. For those that don't know, what Trevor thinks of an answer, the card set is like pretty much every expansion that you're seeing that's coming out. I feel like almost every month now for Magic that you're seeing across Arena, the most accessible way to see it. And each class set is like a different plane, which would a different setting. But for a specific, like, draw inspiration for one specific class.
Artificer, Kaladesh, 100%.
Oh yeah.
Yes. Yeah. Good call. Good call.
I think
arguably Mirrodin too. Mirrodin could work for Artificer really well.
Yeah.
Swashbuckler, anything Ixalan. Like look at Ixalan because
Druid
the
too.
pirate theme really works.
Druid too. If you lean into the dinosaur aspect and kind of just reflavor some of the forms, but that would be actually pretty sweet.
Korea for druids too,
because
of the kaiju beasts. Like,
yeah.
I was thinking about coming up with like a mutate mechanic for monsters in 5e, but I never got around to like making it when Ikoria was coming out. But that would work really well for like druids and rangers because that plane was very much like kind of kaiju inspired, and there were a lot of like monsters that you could like modify with. I'm doing this because you would do it with the cards.
Yeah.
I'm trying to think of others that would like tie to specific. The thing is, a lot of the Magic planes are pretty rich, so there are examples of a lot of different classes. Maybe not all of them. Some of the more specific classes do fall into other. Like if you want the kind of traditional fantasy, you could look at something like Lorwyn or something like even like Odyssey or older sets like Legends and things like that. For like the traditional any of the classes fantasy, then as you get into other sets you get more specific, right? Like Kaladesh was this plane of invention that was like I mean, I don't even know how to describe it other than that. I think that is the most like shorthand description of it, and it would tie really well to specifically artificers, like Phil said. But I don't know. I think that it's rough because there are a lot of inspirations. A lot of planes could inspire a lot of different character classes.
Yeah, and then I would say there's only like a few planes that is like iconic. This is the thing that would fit, and it kind of helped define a certain class. But then you get settings like Dominaria, the classic MTG setting, where which was equivalent to D&D's Forgotten Realms, where everything's going to fit in there. So, and then you can just draw upon certain factions, certain storylines, to the point, even like characters like Karn, Planeswalker, who pretty much would equate to some sort of Warforged in Magic, right? And then, even more current Strixhaven, if you want to play any sort of spellcaster, you can just draw inspiration from any of the colleges and then just take that. You want to play some artistic sort of mage. Okay, look at the Prismarian, how they handle it. You want to play more of a face or some sort of a leadership mage. It's called Silver Quill would be perfect. So yeah,
I think marshals would be the hardest because, like we were talking about before, everyone in most Magic planes has magic, like has some sort of spell casting. So even when I'm coming up with homebrew, like marshals is where I have the most trouble because everything is so directly intertwined with magic. I mean, it's the name of the game. But if you like, there are some sets. I mean, like even Kaldheim is like a Norse themed set that would be really good for like barbarians if you want to come up with like a Nordic barbarian class or like kind of flavor it for a subclass. There are some that would work, but that is the biggest problem that I've had with a lot of the homebrew that I've come up with is I know that there are some people who play martial classes and want them to feel non-magical, like they want to play a knight, and that the line between that and magic is sometimes very hard for me to homebrew because my automatic assumption is like give them abilities, give them spells, and that's taking away that kind of martial flavor. At least I feel like some people could argue that, and I would understand where they're coming from.
Absolutely. I when I'm working on design and expansions, not so much the settings, but card searches is what I'll do. Like when I was assessing what kind of elemental damage would be appropriate for blue, I would just do a card search for blue damage spells. So like from marshals, I'm working on this this Strixhaven rogue fighter subclass for Swift Blades because Boros has Swift Blades. So it'd be like a white red mana sort of third caster off thing that both rogue and fighter could take. That's built around speed and alacrity and stuff like that. So I would do a card search looking for terms that are using those type of words. Like haste is already a mechanic that exists inside of D&D. But so like the larger picture of like if I'm doing a fighter, like MTG card search for soldier or warrior or berserker or whatever keywords that are popping up in your brain as the kind of class you want to play. That's the search that you do. And that informs you about the kind of color identities that they already have, the kind of power levels that they have on a scale of 1 to 12, and what kind of abilities that are inherent with them that you could then create idea and mechanics out of to translate into 5e. And then less so much about the plane, but more about the intention.
Jumping from that too, like depending on the cards you find when you're doing a search like that, like you can get a lot of additional background or information when, like, I know lately Wizards has been doing a lot of like the legends of plane name, and they'll do an article where they'll have like the legendary cards from that plane and a brief explanation of what those cards, like what they do, a bit more flavor, a bit of background, which is like, that doesn't matter for the card game. But if you're looking at a card and you're wanting to, okay, like why does this person have this ability, or why is this, I mean, there's a card in Strixhaven, Cody, the Vociferous Codex. It's just this like animated spell book. Like there's in the article, it talks about like what he does or what it does and why it is like doing what it's doing. And if you see a card in a random search on Scryfall or on Gatherer that you're just trying to use for ideas, the art can be an idea, the flavor text, the ability, like you said, the mana cost or power level. But also if you then like look up that card, you can then maybe find like actual lore, which can then inform a background when you're. I have no shame in doing that kind of thing. Like I think that as like RPG players and creators, I think we borrow and modify and tweak. That's kind of the nature of homebrew, and I think that there's a lot of it. It's not front facing, right? It's not on the cards themselves. It's elsewhere in other published material or what have you.
Yeah, and I think that calls back to just in general how a lot of people approach and build their characters for games that we were saying, Trevor. Even if you weren't in playing Magic, somebody wants to play The Witcher. You know, it's very similar to that. Or they want to somehow play Batman in D&D. How do you do that? And it's the same approach. I like this card. I like this mechanic. What things in the game let me do that? And if they don't, how can I? You know. So yeah, if you're gonna like look for inspiration for characters or mechanics, looking at the cards and just figuring out how to fit them into the game at some point is the best way. Fry Minis, what's going on, Eric? Please talk about Banner Hobbs and MTG for the next 2 to 3 hours. Shout out to my B Hobbs. Oh my god. Actually, there is a Banderhob adjacent characters in Innistrad. They are creepy. They are not the fun, cuddly stuff that you have on your channel. Go shout out to Eric Fry Minis. Actually, big shout out to him. I believe he's getting his Strixhaven book soon. So, yeah. So looking forward to his coverage. Definitely check out Fry Minis' channel. In the next coming weeks for Strixhaven before it drops out. I wanted to jump back a little bit on the color pie, specifically asking you, Phil, since you worked on converting the Magic system, spellcasting system into fifth edition with your I believe what's mana tap burn, right?
Tap burn.
Yeah. Okay. For those wanting to use this, what are the pretty much the advantages of introducing this and having this at the table compared to the base spellcasting system? And would you just apply it to only Magic settings, or is it easily slottable into pretty much like Forgotten Realms, Exandria, any of the other non-Magic settings?
The latter, absolutely. Not to go on too long of a bend to eat up time. Yeah, Tap on Tap Burn. It's on DM's Guild. Full preview, so you can read the entire thing and assess it for yourself. But purchasing will help excuse the time I spend away from my family to do all the painting and all the development and all the writing, yada yada yada. So please invest if it grabs your attention. I built it specifically to be incredibly modular. So that you can use color as just narrative flavor without implementing any mechanics at all. So if you just want to play a blue-white Azorius wizard, then you can just simply take spells and apply blue-white cosmetics to it. That's the minimum. Then you can start going further and further down the rabbit hole. Like I use, I'm running an Eberron game right now, and I use color mechanics in Eberron. So the next step is to get rid of the 8 schools of magic altogether, and instead codify all the spells and all effects and creatures and stuff to be color coded. So when I'm describing, like we have an arcane trickster in our team that loves to disable magical traps. So when he picks up that there's a trap, I begin to have a conversation with him about what colors are present inside the magics. So he'll have to start unfurling, like he'll use his tools to start grabbing and picking at the magical weaving that's on the spell. And as he starts peeling it apart, he can discover, like, well, you know that you saw right away that it's white because it's a protection spell. That was obvious to anyone that could see it. Like any human could look at that chest and there's like a little white radiance on it. It's like, well, that's dangerous. I don't know if I want to fuck with that. But the arcane trickster wants to. So as he starts picking at it, he uncovers strands of blue that are hiding a giant nest of black and red mana that's going to drop on anyone that just foolishly picks at it. So he has a skill challenge of like 3 or 4 iterations that our bard can get into, that our druid can get into to lend aid or cast spells to help implement him picking the spell apart. And like if you see a creature eyes flash red as opposed to green, that can give you information about, well, what might this guy be able to do, knowing what we know about color in the game. Then if you really want to dive deep, then you throw away spell slots and you go with the color mana system that's also built into there. So you can tie your narrative to your mechanics as deeply as you want. And like I want to be pure Azorius, so I'm going to cast blue and white spells. But if I want to have red spells, then I'm going to have to spend time studying them so I can make them blue instead of red. So it goes as deep as you want. And again, it just ties into all the flavor that already exists inside the game. And instead, like the schools are just there as a meta tag. But when you actually use color, it's a color. It literally colors the world with whatever narrative flavor the DM wants to lean into. So you can literally bathe the world in the colors of magic that you want emphasized in the game, or at least just that session. So pause.
Yeah, I honestly definitely go check it out, especially you're wanting to switch up your magic casting system, adding a little bit more flavor, especially with the color ply, adding in more narrative aspect of the morality and these concepts, I definitely go check out Phil's supplement. It is awesome. And if you really need to get that magic itch into your Ravnica and Theros setting, definitely pick it up. It'll definitely flesh out the world and really feel like a magic setting and not just D&D with magic skin on it at times. All right, I want to get into some of these questions. Let's see. Asking in the chat, I believe it was. I know. I see you, Fred. Thank you for jumping in. And I believe Dracos Diabolus, you asked, why does no one cover the plane shift booklets? So these were supplements on the D&D page, I believe. That was done. DM's Guild. Yeah, the DM's Guild, that you can find them there now. So yeah, why was nobody covering these?
I certainly have opinions about that. Should I lead that?
Yeah, go for it.
They're forbidden. DM's Guild they're on DM's Guild, but you can't do anything with them. They're isolated, standalone documents that Wizards of the Coast has not given any creators permission to actually implement. So even though Ixalan is there for you to take a look at, I can't create any factions of Ixalan and publish them on the DM's Guild. If I wanted to take money away from Wizards of the Coast and dive into a Patreon and start developing stuff, I could reference that document and build my own stuff. But my own personal philosophy, and I think a lot of other people's philosophy, is that if I'm going to create content that I want people to consume, I should put it in the same location where the plane shift documents are. But sorry, Seymour, you can't. So I think that's a huge roadblock that they've kind of shot themselves in the foot over by creating that restriction. But beyond that, it's like 15-page documents. It's like take 4 pages from every chapter in Ravnica and then build a campaign setting around it. I'm just homebrewing the whole thing anyway. Thanks for the thoughts, but I need depth. We need more. We need the depth that we get in Theros. We need the depth in Ravnica, and those plane shifts were a great start, but I want more. So anyway, that's my hot take.
Yeah.
I didn't realize there were so many stipulations related to them on DM's Guild, and I didn't even realize that they were like still available on DM's Guild. I saw them when they were coming out on. It was like, I don't know if it was the Magic side or the D&D side or both, but when they were being published, and I thought it was the coolest thing. Once I saw, I think the Ravnica book was the first D&D crossover source book. Once I saw that got published, I was like, all right, well, there's going to be no more of those. That plane shift is done. Because they realized they could just publish full books. It's going to take longer, and they're going to be more thorough. But I saw that, and I'm like, all right, we're not getting any more of those PDFs because they could do it. I think, and I'm not positive on this, but I'm pretty sure those were like someone's passion project. Like it was essentially just someone who was like, hey, I really want to run a game in Innistrad or in Ixalan, so I'm going to throw together this little PDF so I can, and then they threw it up on online. Loved those things. I absolutely love those things. And I wish that they weren't as restrictive. I didn't realize that was the case, but
it's a shame.
I think they realized that it takes more time, but they could just publish full books, and that's why they stopped making them, at least. It's an assumption. I don't have any inside information.
Yeah,
none of us did.
I think it was James Wyatt. He was behind all these PDFs, and he was, I believe, running a Magic the Gathering D&D game, homebrew at home. And then, on the job, it was just like, hey, we like that. Could you just like create some PDFs? And then there was a lot of positive reception, especially from us crossover folks where we like both games. And eventually Wizards, and I believe they got the new CEO at the time. And then he said, hey, let's actually, do some corporate synergy and start developing products because there looks like there's a market for it. For those that are may not know James Wyatt, he was the lead designer for Fizzbands, Treasure Your Dragons now. So Wizards took him from the Magic team and have brought him back over to the D&D side. So, and
actually, on the note of Fizzbands, there was the blurb. There's a very minor blurb in Fizzbands about
Tarkir.
Thank you. I couldn't pronounce the word in my brain. And that to me is. We were talking about Innistrad before, and like even if they had just done something like that in like the Ravenloft book or whatever, as like Innistrad being a domain of dread, I have a suspicion, and there's nothing to back this up, but I think that they're a little bit they don't want to step on their own toes, and I think some of Innistrad does kind of like back up against Curse of Strahd, and they don't want to overlap those. I mean, like the Shadows over Innistrad set, the more like cosmic horror one, less so. But I think that that's why they didn't come out with, or haven't come out yet with, an Innistrad book. But even if they had just mentioned, like they did with Tarkir, I loved that they did that. It was like a couple of sentences, but being able to just see that, and I said it in my review of Fizzbands, but like I've always had a mental block when it comes to running dragons, especially at lower levels. I read that little blurb about Tarkir, and I'm like, oh, that, okay, well, now I get it. Like that, because it put it into context that I understand. It's awesome. I didn't realize that the designer was like kind of bounced back and forth between teams, though. It makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, and then I think that's what you brought up, something I've noticed. There's a slight missed opportunity with Van Richten's. They literally could have just put a single page or a paragraph that says, "Oh, hey, Innistrad." We don't need to do a whole book. Here's Innistrad. Here's some base thing. It's a human base setting. There's monsters that are trying to attack humans, and then there's now a cosmic horror element. So here's the parts of the book you can go get and have at it. And then I believe we're gonna switch gears just a little bit, trying to get to some of your guys' questions. We got a question for Fred. Thank you, How to D&D Fred. Go check out his channel. Please. He asked, okay, what Magic the Gathering setting do you expect to be published after Strixhaven? So we know Strixhaven's are Harry Potter-esque Magic School adjacent for D&D now. I would say, what do you think, or what do you hope for the next setting?
I have two separate answers, and one of them is neither of them have any kind of like backing or support, because I think that like in terms of popularity, I know Innistrad is like wildly popular. But I think if they were going to do that, they would have done what you just suggested. They would have put a blurb in it in Van Richten's. They would have already mentioned it. In terms of my personal preference, my Kingdom for a Lorwyn book, I want it so bad. That's when I started playing Magic again. Like, I absolutely love that plane, but that's just a personal like preference of mine. I think, and I don't know if this, I wouldn't be surprised if they do like a Dominaria one, because of how like we're coming back to it again. I wouldn't be shocked on that front. I think if Streets of New Capenna does well as a set in the card game, I would not be shocked if they do something like that for 5e. Yeah. Obviously, we don't know basically anything about that plane yet, but given the flavor of it, it seems like, I mean, it does seem a little bit like kind of overlapping with Eberron, at least based on the very scarce amount of information we have. But I wouldn't be surprised if they do something like that. But again, these are just guesses.
I'm guessing Capenna is going to be multiplanar. That they're crime syndicates that span multiple planes, that dip into Ravnica, that dip into Kaladesh, but without specifically citing it, like House Cannith, or I'm not as good with the Dragon Mark houses as I am with MTG settings, but they've got rogue and thief guilds that are bound to dragon marks that could easily tie into a Capenna, sort of like Xanathar, and in Forgotten Realms could easily be vying for control over a black-blue crime syndicate with multi-dimensional reach. But to answer the core question, I think the next actual, well, I don't know what their plans are for another MTG book, but I think if they actually pull the trigger on a Planejammer book, that's when they would introduce actual planeswalking mechanics to address Joe's questions in chat. He and I had worked on Gathering the Realms, which is on DM's Guild, which talked about curving Forgotten Realms into color, since they had the Adventures in Forgotten Realms card set come out. And that addressed looking at the outer planes and the inner planes from a color perspective as well, which was a great project to work on, definitely worth looking into. But I think that's the most logical place for them to go next to answer that planeswalking question that everyone has. That then opens up, well, how the hell am I supposed to get to Strixhaven in the first place?
Yeah.
Or I'm in the Gray Mists or the Astral Sea or whatever you want to call it, and what worlds are out there other than Eberron, Forgotten Realms, Alexandria for me to actually reach. And it's like, well, Ravnica and Theros and any other MTG setting you can throw in. And I absolutely agree with you, Trevor. I think the reason they didn't add Van Richten, as logical as it would have been, and as disparaging I am towards them not adding in the strat, at least as a blurb in the Ravenloft book, is they I want to say they're going to build a whole book out of it, but they just built a whole book out of it without actually using any of the flavor. So I want to see that because that is awesome flavor and I'd love it. I honestly don't know where they're going to go next. I don't know.
My hope, Kamigawa.
New or old?
I would say new. Old one. They was fortunate. Wizards just does have a good track record in representing Asian culture and a lot of like non-Western culture. But also the old Kamigawa set just didn't resonate with people, despite it actually being really heavily tied to lore and actually had a better representation of some of this stuff than on the D&D side of stuff. But Neon Kamigawa is like a cyberpunky take on the setting. So they're bringing the whole setting back now into the future. And taking those themes of cyberpunk, which is going to be like this heavy industrialized world that is pretty much eating up at the natural resources, and then obviously the social economic situation, everything. But it's going to be a magic version of it. It's not based on tech; it's based in a sense of magic, and I think this is where they can kind of compete with Paizo with their Starfinder and any other company that's trying to take 5th edition and do it in a sci-fi setting. They don't have to make it sci-fi. It's like, no, this is a fantasy setting, but with the aesthetic of cyberpunk. How do you do that? And I think it would be perfect. It would give them a different feeling that they don't have in any of these other books that are out there. It would give that the sci-fi feeling flavor of the game that eventually can transition to like a Spelljammer, something they want to go like super heavy into sci-fi. I'm super excited. Just the aesthetics of that. Only the art we've seen. I believe the set comes out in February, so I'm getting super hyped because there's like I started playing around Kamigawa, end of Kamigawa, early Ravnica, so those two sets are like they have a good place in my heart. And it's just that, and exactly, Rich is saying it's time for Final Fantasy VII homebrew. Yeah, like it has those aesthetics of Final Fantasy VII, and it's just, I really hope they just do a book with that. Just give us like more laser swords, more. I would love to see like sort of like a magic based multi tools that kind of let you hack and maybe have like a hacking mechanic, like that's like a layered skill challenge. Yeah.
That'd be fun. I like if I understand what's happening with it, it's the magic is pulling from the spirit world, so it's enraging all of the natural spirits. So you've got really great druid ranger flavor versus artificer and warlock potential there, which that's just crazy good D&D flavor right there. Even in a modern, I mean, Ravnica's already done a lot to try to bridge us into a post-industrial revolution environment that goes a step further than Eberron. This is just that next step, which I think is, like you said, it would really, you can go from Stone Ages to super tech, and it all works on the same mechanical curve, which is glorious.
All right, Stephen Hare asking a little cheeky question. Were you a dirty Zubero combo player? No. Actually, when I played back then, I didn't play competitive. I was like, oh, there's samurais. This is sick. I'm going to make a samurai deck. And samurais were horrible in Kamigawa. Bushido was just a terrible mechanic. In a little small tangent, I do hope for Commander, that's the main format I play, they finally have a red-white samurai Commander legendary that who can play it. But yeah. Neat. Yeah. Okay, if there's not any more questions, I just want to say then we're going to be wrapping up. It is now 12 on my end. The hour is hit. I just want to say thank you guys for joining me. This was definitely fun. Definitely, if you really are considering, or were on the edge of like whether you were wanting to pick up the Ravnica, Theros, and even Strixhaven books to add into your games, I'm 100% behind it. They do add a sense of value for your game, and the Magic the Gathering has even more value. Definitely check out Phil's work on the DM's Guild, especially with his work bringing in the color color-based spell casting and leaning into that color palette, it really enriches your game. And then definitely check out Trevor's stuff. And if you're wanting to bring in pretty much monsters and magic items and surprise your players, whether you're in these magic settings or not, definitely go check out Trevor's work. He's doing a kick-ass job there too. Okay, or Phil, we'll start off with you. Where can they find you?
Fil Kearney on Twitter is the best way to keep your finger on my pulse. I'm on the DMs Guild. Fil Kearney, FilKearney. It's all my identities are Fil Kearney, so you can find me on anywhere, any channel I exist. If it's Fil Kearney, I'm there. You can go ahead and ping me. Yeah.
And Trevor.
Classes and Constructs on Twitter and here on YouTube, and those are the primary platforms that I use the most. I actually recently, and I have yet to announce this, I think I'm talking about it in my video that goes up on Wednesday, but I started a Discord. Cool. So I can send that link and maybe you could throw it in the description. Yep. But I have a Discord channel now, and we can chat D&D, chat Magic. It's difficult to start a community and kind of foster a community, and I found a lot of that in your Discord, Josh, and Eric's Discord. And I really want to be able to do that, and I want to be able to have these kind of conversations and talk with people. So I figured that would be a great way to get the ball rolling on that. So, yeah, Classes and Constructs, YouTube and Twitter.
Yeah, shoot me a link. I will put in the description, and then I will click and join. So you will definitely find me in there. You can always join Discord here. Also at Dungeoneer's Pack, there's a link in the description already for that. And then you'll see Trevor in there, and I'll shoot you a link too, Phil, if you want to join in, and then you can see everybody sit there and talk. So yeah, so some just a little announcements for the channel right now. This week, speaking of the Magic and D&D crossover, I'm continuing my character builds for Strixhaven. So I just dropped Condrix, which is a Circle of Stars druid build. So you definitely want to go check that one out. That was definitely fun. Next week, and this is what brings me to some announcements. Thanksgiving weekend. Thanksgiving week is this week. There's going to be no new video and no live stream. I'm going to take a little bit of a holiday break, but I will be back the following week with a Silver Quill build, and then also we're going to jump into a little bit more Strixhaven stuff before the book comes out. I believe I have so far planned Ukulele Bard, another designer that's on the DM's Guild. We're going to be taking a look a little bit at that Strixhaven UA because with the multi-class subclasses, because he took that idea and applied it to Ebron. So definitely come back for that one. Yeah, it's awesome. He's very up on it. I know a lot of people were kind of down on that in the general design, so I want to pick his brain on how he approached it because I like the idea. It's just Wizards' approach to it was a little off. So yeah. So next week, no stream. I'll be back the following week for the next 2 weeks, and then after that, at the end of the year, I'm taking another two weeks off to celebrate holidays and the new year. So yeah, that's what you can expect. Again, thank you guys for joining me on this. Love to have you guys back at certain points. And until next time, guys, you guys take care and then have a good one. I'll see you guys later.
Thank you so much. This was a blast.
Thank you so much.
Yeah.
Talking with you, Trevor. Thank you.